Good morning. I'm Win Thurlow, the Executive Director of MedTech, the Association for New York's Life Sciences and Biomed Industry. Welcome to the fourth installment of our Empire State Biomed Focus 2022 series, a virtual tour of 5 innovation regions across upstate New York. We turn today and cast a spotlight on Rochester and the Finger Lakes. We're pleased to partner on today's program with the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce, the region's leading economic development engine. We also want to thank our friends at the New York State Division of Science, Technology, and Innovation, NYSTAR, for their underwriting support. At MedTech, we have a mission to grow New York's life sciences industry. Our members are companies and academic institutions that make the medical devices, drugs, and treatments relied upon by patients around the globe. If you're interested in joining or learning more about us, you can find more information at our webpage, medtech.org. And similarly, you can learn more about the terrific work that they do at the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce at their website, greaterrochesterchamber.com. Before we begin, let me give you a quick overview. Today's program will consist of 3 parts. In just a few minutes, I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to my good friend, Bob Duffy, to begin hour 1, which will be a terrific discussion, kind of a 10,000-foot view of Rochester and the Finger Lakes, the things that you need to know about this region. In hour 2, we will take a deeper dive into some specific life sciences resources and assets here in the region to connect you with the growing life sciences industry. And then in hour 3, you'll have an opportunity to listen to short interviews with 4 really exciting life sciences and healthcare innovators who started and are growing businesses in this region. As I say, I'm going to stop talking soon, but I am going to give you an opportunity to participate. When we turn it over, you'll have a chance to submit questions on our chat function. I hope you will do that. I'm going to turn it over to Bob and his team, and then I'll come back at about the 45-minute mark, and we'll handle as many of those questions as we can get to. With that said, I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to my friend Bob Duffy and his team at the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce. Bob, thanks so much, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Win. I'm Bob Duffy, the CEO of the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce here in the heart of Rochester, the Finger Lakes region. I want to, first of all, thank Win Thurlow and the MedTech team for allowing us to co-host today's event, which I think is terrific. I'm very proud of our region, and you're going to hear from 5 outstanding individual leaders here momentarily describing some of the things going on here. I'll say a few things. First of all, this is a region on the move. We have 19 colleges and universities. We have an incredible technology, higher education, biomed, life science hub here. It is a region that's really filled with great success, great innovation, and really great opportunities. It's something that really is evolved from the past. We were once a 3-company town, and we're now a town of countless companies. And one thing we're very proud of, probably 3 or 4 years ago, 2 MIT professors wrote a book called Jumpstarting America. They looked at 102 regions across the country, and they picked Rochester #1 as a future technology hub, which we are very, very proud of. And so it really gives you a sense of what's going on here, what we're doing. And you can hear today from 5 people that are involved in economic development. We have a great team here. We have great collaboration, great efforts. If you're not from here and looking at this area, please reach out to us. You'll hear from, again, these leaders momentarily, but we have so much to offer. So much is going on. And the most important thing is it's exciting to watch this transformation and what we see in Rochester right now. So without any further ado, our first speaker of the day is Mr. Joe Stefko. I'll say Dr. Joe Stefko. He is the CEO of ROC 2025, an innovative alliance of economic development organizations dedicated to making our Greater Rochester region one of the most dynamic and rapidly growing regional economies in the U.S. Joe is a terrific leader. It's the umbrella group for all the economic development organizations in this region. And so please welcome Joe Stefko and take it away.
Appreciate that, Bob. Good morning, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you and spend a few minutes sharing Rock 2025, the work we're doing, how it was created, and the vision and the impact that we've had now as we just crossed our 3-year mark in this work. I just want to take you back briefly about 3.5 years ago to late 2018. The work that Rock 2025 is engaged in and the alliance itself was the result of a really foundational project that the Boston Consulting Group led with all of our regional economic development organizations. And really that engagement was focused on 2 things. First of all, to benchmark the Greater Rochester region's overall economic performance against a group of peer metros nationally, but then really to look at, with a critical eye, how we're positioned and resourced in this region to do the work of job creation, investment cultivation, talent attraction and retention. In sum, how we could compete more aggressively and successfully with peer regions across the country. And when BCG did that project, on that first task in benchmarking our region's growth against peer metros nationally, they helped to size really a performance delta. It had been a growth story in our region for the better part of the previous decade. Of course, the reality is that it was a growth story everywhere nationally, right? And our growth here was lagging that of many of our peer metros across the country. So we established some baseline metrics at the front end with BCG. And you see out of our peer group of 50 plus MSAs in 2018 where we ranked on year-over-year job growth, on relative unemployment rate, on things like labor force vitality and regional GDP growth. So these benchmarks really help to create that sense of urgency, and number one. And number two, as we looked at how the region's economic development infrastructure, I suppose I'll call it, was positioned and resourced to do the work of job creation and investment cultivation, identified a set of strategic opportunities. And you see those on the screen now. So more consistent and intentional priorities across organizations within the ecosystem, being better coordinated in terms of our overarching strategy and the tactics that we employ here in the region. Telling our story, marketing and branding the region in a more aligned and much more deeply resourced way. And then the last item on the screen, I suppose you could argue, is fundamentally, in addition to the coordination role that Rock 2025 plays, probably the most important role we play is bringing net new resources, private, I should add philanthropic investment, to that economic development ecosystem and investing it in these alliance partners in ways that build our competitive capacity, build our horsepower to compete for job growth and new investment. So the alliance is comprised of those economic development partners in the region, several of whom you're going to see on the screen momentarily. So Greater Rochester Enterprise, of course, Bob and his team at the Chamber, Visit Rochester, which is our tourism partner, Rochester Downtown Development Corporation, and of course, all of our friends and partners in the public sector, from Empire State Development and the Finger Lakes Regional Economic Development Council, down to the city of Rochester, Monroe County, and all 9 counties, frankly, of the greater Finger Lakes region. So again, Rock 2025 was created following that BCG project in early 2019 to essentially own this and implement this major coordinated capacity building plan. I always stress that Rock 2025 is not a new economic development organization. We didn't set out to solve the challenge of having a lot of organizations in the economic development space by creating another one. It really is a coordination vehicle. So all of the work that we do is really done through our alliance partner organizations and through grants to those organizations. So that really boils down to 2 primary roles for Rock 2025. As I mentioned before, it's to cultivate and invest in ways that build the capacity of the ecosystem. We're leading what's grown to be a $25 million capacity building plan. Secondly, to coordinate investments, those capacity building investments across 5 key economic development pillars, each of which has a single organizational quarterback. And all of those investments are with an eye toward driving 4 primary goals: driving net new jobs in the region, increasing our regional GDP, increasing regional wealth, and at the same time, making sure that we are conscious of connecting everybody in the region to opportunity in a way that elevates individuals from poverty. What you see on the screen now are our 5 capacity building investment focus areas: business retention and expansion, along with business attraction; regional talent strategy, that's all about connecting, attracting, and retaining talent; focusing on downtown innovation and activation; and again, telling our story through a coordinated regional branding and marketing effort. To date, we are just shy of $20 million committed toward that $25 million capacity building plan. Our business community in the region and philanthropic sector have been incredibly generous and have really stepped up to the plate to invest in this work. The last thing I want to share with you is a few takeaways in terms of metrics that we've begun to see move in our first 3 years. What you see on the screen right now are the 53 benchmark metros along with the 6 primary MSAs that we benchmark every single one of our metrics against. As of the end of 2021, within that peer group of 53 MSAs, we are up 10 points on our year-over-year rate of job growth. Our relative unemployment rate has actually improved 17 points in the peer group. We've seen positive movement on our labor force growth rate, our regional GDP growth rate. And, pandemic, of course, has had real impacts on all of this work. Since the real depths of the pandemic in April and May of 2020, within that peer group of 53, Greater Rochester's job recovery rate actually ranks in the top 20. So we're beginning to see real seeds of the investments, and it is in no small part due to the phenomenal work that all of Rock 2025's alliance partners are doing right now. So I leave you on the screen right now with both Rock 2025's website address, the website address to our Greater Rock regional marketing campaign. And if there are any follow-up questions, I'm certainly happy to connect with folks by email. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, very much. Great presentation. And I want to just comment, Joe has done a phenomenal job. And also I want to recognize and thank Rob Sands, who is the chairman of Constellation Brands, based here in Rochester, who has led the private sector philanthropic efforts and done a great job. So great presentation. Next, we have our next speaker is going to be Matt Herbert. Matt is the CEO of the Greater Rochester Enterprise Organization that focuses on business attraction and retention in our region. He's going to go over some of the recent projects made possible through his efforts and through local, state, and federal funding. But Matt also has done a phenomenal job, very passionate about getting people here and also growing jobs and businesses that are already here. So please welcome Matt Herbert.
Thanks, Bob. It's nice to be in front of you all this morning, and hopefully we can do this in Rochester, where we can show you some of the companies here on the street, as well as our outstanding college and university partners. I just want to make sure everybody can see this screen. I'll take that as a yes. All right. So as we talk about Greater Rochester Enterprise, again, we exist, as Joe said, to support business growth throughout the 9-county region in Rochester, really promoting the region nationally and beyond for business investment, especially the attraction of new business and expansion of local businesses, and the understanding that the businesses that are here and the knowledge and connectivity there helps us on that business attraction front. So there is a key to that relationship. And also, if you remember anything about Greater Rochester Enterprise, we exist to connect you to the right people, the right resources to expand your business here. And that includes the people who are on this presentation panel with me today, as well as those beyond. A quick snapshot on the region. We cover the 9-county region, just over 1.2 million in population, a workforce of over 600,000. And as I think we're all seeing, that unemployment rate continues to hover around 3%. We've got a very geographically diverse region, as well as a diverse population. And these are just some of the accolades we talk about when we promote the region for investment. The best place in the Northeast to live, post-pandemic, 7th best in the U.S. Whenever that coronavirus pandemic ends. One of the most innovative cities in the world. We're constantly ranked by MIT as one of the best metros for innovation and future growth. Brookings, top 5 innovation city. Also a very affordable city when you talk about housing, neighborly, outstanding arts in the region, and one of the best markets for patents per 1,000 workers. And that's continued even as some of our larger companies have declined in size. In fact, just about 97% of employees now are at firms of 100 or less. So it is that small, innovative company that drives growth, in addition to some of the companies I'll show you in a minute. And then one of my favorite rankings is that safest weather city in the Northeast. We do get a dusting of snow from time to time, but that's just fresh water, and our food and beverage processors and so many other industries need it. And then these are some of the major corporations that call this region home. Certainly L3Harris, Panasonic, GM, Corning just announced a major expansion. Kodak, Monroe, Alstom, DuPont, who does a lot of work in the biologic area, Thermo Fisher Scientific, who has expanded here, Paychex expanded as well, Ortho Clinical, CareStream, Constellation, Bausch & Lomb, all hiring and expanding here, Wegmans headquarters. And when we look at some of the investments in 2021, we had 39 project wins. That's where Companies are investing, building new facilities here. The significant in Plug Power's innovation, their gigafactory here in the fuel cell technology space. Carestream expanding in the medical device space as well. Constellation Brands moving downtown. A significant investment there. Pace Electronics, Ortho Clinical Diagnostics, $50 million investment, 30 new jobs. IDEX, which is doing some design work and engineering. Premier Packaging also invested over $1 billion of investment, 2,300 new jobs, 2,800 retained. Rochester Clinical Research among those as well, doubling in size as they led some of the vaccine research to get those vaccines up and running. And certainly Amazon with their robotic fulfillment, middle mile sort, and last mile distribution investment here. And so far in 2022, we've seen 25 companies expand, Optimax being one that has expanded several times. They are also in that medical device supply chain. Ionomer is doing fuel cell research here. La Fermière is going to build a yogurt plant here. Corning, as we talked about before, is in that semiconductor supply chain. Tessie Plastics also announced a major investment here. Precision Optical Transceivers, Baldwin Richardson Foods, and CooperVision that is also in that contact lens manufacturer R&D, all told over $375 million of new investment, 2,200 new jobs, and 1,000 jobs retained. And then specifically in the life science area, we've seen investments from Greenlight Bioscience, who is doing RNA-related biomanufacturing here in the region, Visual DX, which is doing an outstanding job leveraging software, information technology, data analytics, and optics to help people identify dermatology issues, leveraging technology and get advanced treatment. Bausch & Lomb, again, investing, creating 100 new jobs in their R&D and contact manufacturing line. Evolve Additive Technologies, leveraging some of our material science capabilities. And we talked about Ortho Clinical Diagnostics, again, over a $50 million investment. They were one of the leads in COVID testing, antibody tests and antigen tests, as COVID really created a global issue for us. And 30 new jobs there. Carestream, again, medical imaging systems, but also expanding its material science capabilities, partnering on new technologies, and creating 70 new jobs here in the region. And again, that's just a snapshot of some of the activity, but we really draw on our 19 colleges and universities, more than 75,000 students in the region, as well as our connectivity across the upstate, 18,000 graduates. We were constantly ranked number one in physical sciences, first in mathematics, third in engineering and engineering technologies, third in biologic and biomedical sciences, and fifth in computing and information systems. And all of those come together to really support the life science capabilities throughout our liberal arts colleges, as well as University of Rochester and RIT. And it's interesting, too, watching synergy as bio students who graduate Geneseo oftentimes turn into researchers at the University of Rochester. Let's give you a high-level snapshot of the U of R. Again, 26 in primary care medicine. They're leveraging a lot of advanced technologies and research to bring things from the lab to treat customers better, especially innovation related to service, going not only through COVID, but also in stem cell research, pathogens, genomics, and so many more. You're going to hear more about that. Constantly ranked in the top 50 for federally financed R&D, 26 for medical schools, 37th for medical research. And again, that biomedical engineering program, one of the best life science labs here in the region, and also leading Empire Discovery Institute, which is a partnership with Roswell and the University of Buffalo. And then RIT also has continued to advance their sponsored research, over $82 million in 2020, leading bioinformatics epicenter, biomechanical imaging laboratory, and so many other degrees that are advancing health and well-being here in their connectivity, not just with U of R as we talk about the response to the pandemic, but also working with Rochester Regional Health and their system to expand and continue to innovate in healthcare and biotechnology. And again, a lot of this comes from our highly skilled and productive workforce. Again, over 65% of the population has some college education. We're also building out a forward center now, leveraging Industry 4.0 technology. So when you look at the complete ecosystem from emerging tech through production, advanced technologies, we constantly rank as one of the best places to work, including productivity compared to other markets where companies have other operations throughout the U.S. So we would certainly encourage you to look at Rochester as you consider investment. Always ranking again on productivity. We do have a fact that if you're an operation, a high-tech operation of 50 or more, you can earn profits of $1 million a year more in Rochester based on outstanding technology, the cost of operating here compared to major metros in Boston, New York, Northern Virginia, and San Francisco. So we encourage you to contact us to get started. And also, we've got that great place to live. You can enjoy some of the best amenities in the Northeast. We've got the Grand Canyon of the Northeast, as well as outstanding Finger Lakes environment, and certainly Lake Ontario, and some outstanding arts and cultural amenities to take advantage of. And again, you can contact any of us here to get that process started. And there's certainly more to the story. We encourage you to visit rochesterbiz.com or give me a call. That's my direct number, 585-530-6208. And I believe we'll take some questions at the end. And hopefully I kept it to 5 minutes.
Matt, you're great. If Matt took his time, it'd be a 20-minute presentation. And I mentioned earlier, we're a region on the move, and you get a sense from Matt's presentation what is going on. Everybody is crazy busy. I want to thank Matt and his team for what they've done at GRE in terms of attracting and keeping businesses here. And please reach out. So I thank you, Matt. And our next presenter is going to be Simeon Bannister. Simeon is the Vice President of the Rochester Area Community Foundation, soon to be the President and CEO at the end of this year. He will discuss economic equity initiatives and how important looking at economic development through a lens of equity is so important for our region. And Simeon has been a great leader in this region for a long time in many different capacities. But I think the philosophy is we can't be successful if we leave anybody behind. And we do have a substantial amount of poverty in the region, and Simeon is at the forefront of trying to address that. So please welcome Simeon Bannister.
Thanks so much, Bob. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. And as some might know, Bob is our former mayor, and I've been pounding around talking together about these kinds of issues for quite some time. I'm also grateful to Win Thurlow at MedTech for bringing you all here to learn a little bit about Rochester and about some of the exciting things that we have going on here. At the Community Foundation, where I work, we have the great pleasure of supporting an extraordinarily philanthropic community. Here in Rochester, by any measure, including by the National Center for Community Service, Rochester regularly outpunches its weight, if you will, in terms of its philanthropic expression as well as its volunteer service. And so we're really grateful to support the interests of many folks in this community that are inclined to work in this way. At the Community Foundation, we have two key goals. The first goal is vitality, or a recognition that Rochester is a place that is growing and is exciting and is a place that you should be. And the second goal that we have at the Community Foundation is around equity and realization that so much of that growth is interlocked with the ability to ensure that that growth is evenly distributed and widely spread. I want to echo what we heard from Joe and Matt, who are describing to you in very technical ways how this is a community that is on the rise. That Rochester, as part of the Rust Belt, is knocking off that rust and is really taking some affirmative steps in terms of our growth. If you'll indulge me, I want to give you just a super quick history lesson about Rochester, because you should know a little bit about this place that hopefully you'll consider making your home. Rochester, in many ways, it was defined by two poles. One of those is innovation. And we certainly know that George Eastman and Chester Carlson, Joe Wilson, John Bausch, Henry Lom exist as paragons of that kind of innovative activity that really led to meaningful and sustained economic growth in the beginning part and through the 20th century. The other pole in this town that was really important was that of social progress. And we certainly hail Susan B. Anthony and Austin Stewart and Harriet Tubman, who was just a few miles up the road in Auburn. And of course, in many ways, the citizen to whom we owe so much, Frederick Douglass, who really was the zenith of the expression of social progress in this city. Two poles, innovation and social progress. Now, again, I would argue that innovation led to our economic growth. But one of the challenges that we had to confront in Rochester is that those poles were often separate from one another. And what we saw was economic growth that too often was exclusionary. And quite predictably, the folks that have historically been excluded from that economic growth and that economic activity are the folks that are struggling in this town through the later part of the 20th century, and in some ways, even today. Now, why is that really important for us? Well, it's important for us because it's summed up in a report that the Brookings Institute recently released that was entitled The Economic Gains from Equity. What they state in this report is that if we presume that talent and preference are evenly distributed, that people want to work, that talent doesn't know skin tone, it doesn't know zip code, that you can find talent, raw talent everywhere, then what we have to concede is that if we are not fully maximizing the talent in our community, well, that represents the potential for economic loss. But if we are able to maximize that talent, I've heard it said kind of as a cliche that the cure for cancer could be in any one of the classrooms in our community. That's actually not beyond the pale. It is entirely conceivable that major gains are available to us, that we have to unlock that economic promise by ensuring that all folks have the opportunity to participate. So that's been the story here in Rochester, and in some ways societally. Brookings argued that if you look at the nation's economic growth trajectory, that over the course of the last 30 years or so, that here in the United States, we have given up something in the neighborhood of about $22.9 trillion of economic growth as a result of not maximizing all of the talent that could have otherwise been available to us. $22.9 trillion. We did the calculation to try to figure out what that was here in Rochester, and that number summed to about somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 billion on an annual basis of economic loss by not maximizing talent. Now, you might say, dude, this is a happy day. This is a chance for us to be excited about what's happening here in Rochester. Why are you telling the bad news? Well, because bad news, flipped the other way, is absolutely wonderful news. The wonderful news that I have to share with you is that here in Rochester, we are figuring this conundrum out. And I think we're doing it in some ways that are even beyond some cities and communities that might be compared to us. In Rochester, we are realizing that the magic is in the convergence, that the convergence of innovation and social progress, that making sure that everyone has the chance to participate in the innovative activities that are happening here in this community is the route towards sustained economic progress. How do we know that? Well, we know that workforce development, and particularly in a market that is as tight as this one, is absolutely critical. And if we have a lot of folks that can't participate, we know that that will undermine economic growth. We know that product uptake and ensuring that people are willing to purchase and engage the products that are being developed, particularly in the life sciences, where in communities of color, there's been a lot of dubiousness about the effectiveness and the intent behind the distribution. We saw this certainly in the vaccine distribution, that ensuring that we have diverse populations that are engaged in developing products and the messaging of those products is absolutely critical for product uptake. We know that if we want to have a fertile business climate, can't do that if you've got so many people that are sitting on the economic sidelines. And we also know, according to Harvard Business Review, that 87% of business decisions are enhanced when they are made by diverse teams. So for every reason, it makes sense for us to make these kinds of investments. And in Rochester, that is precisely what we're doing. One project that we are particularly excited about focuses our efforts on procurement equity. What we know is that if we want to have that fertile business climate, our large procurers in town have an opportunity to invest their dollars, to make their purchases in ways that are contribute to a strong business climate and ways that certainly don't undermine the business imperative of those organizations. Folks are saying, sign me up. And folks in the life sciences are saying, sign me up, including the University of Rochester, RIT, Rochester Regional, Kodak. And we even, in an earlier conversation today, we're talking a little bit about the challenges of transportation and what that means. The Rochester Genesee Regional Transportation Authority, RGRTA, has also said, sign us up, all saying that we want to be part of this solution that gives us a chance to use the dollars that we spend in a smart way so that we can grow the business climate and develop the business environment here in Rochester. We want you here, and we want you to come here with the mindset that we are making those kinds of smart investments together. This is going to be a fertile environment for you. We are doing everything in our power to ensure that's the case. And I think that you'll find some distinctions between what's happening here in Rochester and even what you might find in comparable cities all across the country. So I'll stop there. I'm excited about the Q&A and look forward to hearing from the rest of this august panel.
Thank you, Simeon, very much. And I'm going to say Simeon Bannister is not only innovating, he is really leading a cutting edge effort here in the Rochester region to really promote and implement a greater sense of equity, which not only makes great social sense and the right thing to do, it makes great economic sense, which he pointed out. So just appreciate all the work he's doing, and any questions, please reach out. He'll lead that organization. He's number 2 right now. He'll be the leader at the end of the year, and he'll be doing great things on to the future. So Simeon, thanks so much. Next up, I'm going to welcome Vinny Esposito. In terms of partnerships, we could not do our job without the support of New York State. And there's no better partners than Herbert and Vinny Esposito. Vinny is the Senior Vice President of Empire State Development for Regional Economic Development. He leads our regional economic development and has been a huge partner for several years in many different capacities. Welcome, Vinny Esposito, and thank him for all he's done, and I'd like to put over to him. So, Vinny, welcome.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Win. Thank you, MedTech, for the opportunity to be here and represent New York State in this terrific panel and this discussion about this industry. And I also like to recognize, as Win did at the outset, my colleagues at the NYSTAR, the New York State Science, Technology, and Innovation Division, who are sponsors of this series. And Matt Watson's probably someone you know, and it's just one of the many ways New York State supports the life sciences industry through NYSTAR's series of CATs and Centers of Excellence around New York State. And that's one of the points I want to make. I know we're talking regionally, and I will certainly get into the benefit of the Rochester and Finger Lakes area in terms of what we do to support the industry. But, you know, especially in 2018, New York State made a big marker in identifying life sciences as a statewide industry priority with the significant, probably you're well familiar with it by now, $620 million life sciences initiative that's led by Maria Mitchell at my agency, Empire State Development, the state's economic development agency. That also includes several ways in which the state will financially support projects and partnerships in the industry through things like a research and development tax credit. Many of you may have interacted and worked with my colleague Loretta Bine, who supports through our strategic business division various life science companies that are looking to grow and come to New York State. There's also a biodefense fund that's been very successful as part of that initiative. And then there's also the entire division of ESD, what we call New York Ventures, which supports startup capital access, loans, investments for companies throughout New York State, and it had a huge presence in the life sciences industry, working with partners like Theresa Mazzullo, who you're going to hear from next, and Excel Partners. And that division is run by Jennifer Teagan. So these are names that I want you to know as part of ESD's team that support you in this industry. And they're all overseen now by a brand new senior vice president at ESD named Liz Luskin, who just started last month. And her portfolio includes NYSTAR, the Life Sciences Initiative, and New York Ventures. So hopefully MedTech has made that connection with you, and is certainly a series of folks or a host of folks within ESD that can support you. But then locally at the regional level, where I've been working out of the Rochester office for the last 10 years and with the Finger Lakes Regional Economic Development Council, we've also identified and prioritized support for this industry, particularly in 2019, when the Finger Lakes Regional Economic Development Council updated its regional strategy, which is the guiding light for how New York State participates with industries to help them grow. And we updated our strategy, among other things, to include healthcare and life sciences as a primary pillar of our economy and of the state's partnership in making investments for growth. And we've done that in a number of ways the last several years. Many of the projects that you'd heard from Matt Herbert and many of the things that we're working with Joe Stefko and ROC 2025 were supported in part by New York State. Things like the various company expansions that Matt mentioned, things like the Luminate New York competition, which supports optics, photonics, and imaging companies, many of which develop products that are going to be used in medical and life science applications. So there's been a really nice convergence, to use a word you've heard already today, in those industries and in the way that economic development is unfolding. We also have supported in a very large way what you're going to hear from next from Theresa, the Finger Lakes Forward Fund, which is a significant investment of state dollars through Excel Partners into seed and Series A level companies, again, many of which that are in the life sciences industry, and is one of the focus areas. And then there's just annual support on an ongoing basis through our office and through the regional council, through the consolidated funding application process, where any project can apply for state support. And we've had a number of those at the University of Rochester and RIT in particular that has received state assistance and grants to expand labs that are shared uses for startup companies and for research and development activities in the space, as well as different companies that have looked to expand and come here. And that's really what the state's role in all of this is. We are the public part of those public-private partnerships. We stand ready to support the growth in this important industry in any number of ways that I've listed and those that I haven't. And I really appreciate the time to be here today, and look forward to any other Q&A where we want to talk about ways the state can continue to support the industry. So thank you, Bob. Thank you, Wynn. Thank you, everybody, for having me.
Thanks, Vinny, very much. And I want to thank Vinny for his leadership with the regional councils and on the ground, and the development and all the things you heard earlier from all of us, and with Matt's projects could not be possible without Vinny Esposito, Governor Hochul, and the state team. They've been terrific. So thank you very much. And last but not least, our last presenter, and before I open up the Q&A, is Theresa Mazzullo. And she is a powerhouse. She is the CEO of Excel Partners, a venture capital fund that invests in high-tech, high-growth startups in New York State, focused on upstate New York. She'll offer some investor perspective and discuss the benefits of investment in upstate New York. But again, Theresa, a longtime leader here, understands the economic climate as well as anybody, and has been a huge partner, especially helping startups and innovative firms get off the ground and get going. So we're very proud to have her. And when Theresa finishes, we'll all come back on for Q&A. So please welcome Theresa Mazzullo.
Thank you, Bob. And I'll try to share my screen at this point. Is that working? Then we'll get going. First of all, I'd like to thank Bob and Wynn Thurlow and say that I'm the one member on this panel. I'm proud to say that I am on the board of MedTech, which is doing a tremendous job in really trying to harness all of the life science in all of upstate New York. So by this time, you've heard from all my partners who each one has really talked about the strengths of the Finger Lakes region. So by now, you should be fairly convinced and see that the Finger Lakes region really is home to upstate New York's largest and most active biomedical research and life science activity, which is why it is no surprise that, as mentioned early on, Rochester was stated as the #1 city for having the highest potential to become the next generation technology hub. And you've seen some of the stats, but in the world of life science, a lot of elements have to come together to make us be able to claim that we are the most active in biomedical and life science activity. Infrastructure, R&D, funding. Let's take a look at the facts. Most of the R&D in upstate is coming out of the funding, that's the research that's done by the University of Rochester and RIT, $489 million in fiscal year 20. More than $2.28 billion in sponsored research has come out of Rochester in the last 5 years. You've heard my partners talk about how we rank #1 in STEM, #1 in the physical sciences, #1 in mathematics, #3 in related energy, engineering and related fields, and #1 in the U.S. patents per 1,000 workers. And that is extremely important because that is one of the strongest facts that helps support our strength in the life science area. But that's not all. In terms of the National Institute of Health funding, Rochester, with 179 million, has more than Buffalo, Albany, and Syracuse combined. So it's no surprise that of the 4 pillars and assets identified in the Finger Lakes region, that healthcare and life science ranks right at the top. And as you look at where we have our other strengths in optics, photonics, imaging, ag and food tech and manufacturing, the very fascinating part of the Finger Lakes region is that there's a confluence of all of these that come together for the life science technologies and commercializations, as you'll see in just a moment when we look at some of the very exciting companies that are emerging out of the region. So as an investor, Excel has over $61 million under management. As Vinny accurately stated, we are a seed and round A venture capital stage fund investor, and we are looking to help commercialize technologies coming out of the region. In fact, Excel is the only venture capital firm in upstate investing in those hard sciences. And by that, I mean, you'll find that people will go into IT, software, entertainment, media, finance. The VCs in upstate will happily go in those areas. But if you want to clear the room, mention FDA clearance and everyone scatters, because life science has a longer gestation period and it takes a longer time for the exits to be realized. Excel does not back away from the hard sciences. We are all in. And why is that? Precisely because upstate is so strong and the inventory that comes out of the upstate region is in these hard sciences. You've already heard others talk about the workforce, the culture of entrepreneurship. We know we have an ecosystem in biomedical and R&D. We've just looked at those stats. We're a national leader in degrees per capita. We have existing clusters of about 150 life science companies right here in the Finger Lakes region that are creating and employing tens of thousands of individuals in our area in the life science space. In addition to all of this, we also have advanced and growing entrepreneurship support programs like NextCore and RIT, who both have incubators and accelerators. And we have some very unique deal flow that is coming out of the region. Excel invests in startups across multiple sectors, but as you can see from this particular chart, the life science, and in particular medical devices and biotech, represent the strongest. We have over 40% of our portfolio in the life science sector. Am I moving? There we go. So let's take a look at some of the recent companies that we've invested in the life science. Kasana Health, the smart toilet seat. Very creative, high tech, focused on people with chronic heart conditions who need to take their blood pressure on a regular basis. This smart toilet seat does just that. By sitting on it, it will take your blood pressure and give the reading to your healthcare professionals. This is a technology that that originated here in our area and is growing by leaps and bounds and is creating jobs. VPG Medical is also a cardiac monitoring on smartphone. By just looking at your smartphone, it will give a blood pressure reading. Both of these, Kasana Health and VPG Medical, are in the very spaces where the Finger Lakes region is really creating a reputation, and that is in digital health, or what we sometimes refer to as passive compliance and patient empowerment. And the Finger Lakes region is really beginning to dominate. And these are two very exciting examples of companies in those spaces. And in the biotech space, there's Neurogenesis. I will point out that Neurogenesis has moved from Israel and brought its company to be headquartered in Rochester, New York, because of the University of Rochester, in specific because of Dr. Andrew Goodman, who has a world-renowned reputation in neurology. Neurogenesis is developing a promising cure for MS, and it will very likely put Rochester on the map for tourism in medical health. And finally, one of the other recent investments that has been made is in ag tech, but also life science, another company that has moved from Israel to Rochester. Seuss is a company that is reversing the sex of eggs. Did I say that? Yes, I did. And they have a pilot program running now in Geneva that will reverse the sex of eggs in order to produce more female eggs to sell to the hatcheries, thereby eliminating the need to terminate the male eggs. It's a huge issue in Europe and one that is trending in the US as we speak. So these are just 4 of the many innovative, disruptive, and exciting companies that are headquartered right here in the Finger Lakes region that is really making things happen and moving our economic community forward in ways that we will continue to dominate in the biomedical and life science arena. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Theresa. Teresa's a perfect finishing act for this presentation. I want to really thank Theresa, Vinny, Simeon, Matt, and Joe for their very thoughtful presentations. And you get a sense from listening, there's a lot going on here in the Rochester and Finger Lakes region. Please reach out to us. You have all our contact information there, but it is a region on fire right now, and we just appreciate very much the opportunity to come and really present today. So with that, I believe Wynn is going to handle the Q&A. And again, Wynn, thank you for this opportunity, and take it away.
Well, Bob, thank you. That was really an incredibly compelling lineup and series of presentations. So Theresa, Simeon, Joe, Vinny, Matt, thank you all for making a compelling presentation. We've got a number of questions, and Vinny, I may start with you, although I would encourage others to weigh in. One of the questions that we've gotten is, what is my starting point for understanding grants, tax credits, incentives, and the like? And Vinny, I often joke with some of your colleagues at Empire State Development that in the history of time, nobody has ever woken up and said, let me log on to the state's website and see what opportunities are available. But clearly there are opportunities available. And I'm wondering if you can help us navigate through that process.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do that. I think the main takeaway for those watching on this webinar is that you can contact any one of us, and we will get you there. Matt Herbert and Greater Rochester Enterprise are a great resource, but this is a team that works together on a daily basis. And we will make sure that any company that's interested in growing, whatever size you are in our region, that we will get you to the right place that offers various levels of support. So to the question in the chat, if you are an existing life sciences company that's ready to grow, the short answer is you should be in touch with Loretta Bine at ESD's Strategic Business Division. And I think I gave the contact information for her to Sarah to post in the chat so that you can call or email her directly. But it also depends on where you're located, where you might be considering locating to. But that is a great person to call directly if you're an existing life science company in New York State, or if you're looking to become one in New York State. But the main takeaway is that you've got a lot of people in the Rochester region who work together as a team, and we can identify all of the ways to support you. Because the last thing I'll say is, while a lot of companies start off with what are the grants and tax credits that can help me, that's really not the main thing they usually need help with when they're looking to expand. And Matt can speak to that very clearly, that there's a lot of other needs that companies have. And while the incentives can be very important in terms of making the final decision a viable financial one for a company, there are many ways in which we on this screen and others are prepared to help those companies in that decision-making process.
And Vinny, while we're talking about that and to the larger group, one of the challenges that we at MedTech often hear from our members is really looking for assistance and opportunities in the manufacturing space, right? As you look at some of the really leading biomedical hubs, take a look at, say, Boston or Toronto or other places. What what folks innovating in those regions have discovered is that manufacturing is not viable in metropolitan Boston. And instead, we need to look for opportunities like the greater capacity that you can find across the Finger Lakes. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the manufacturing extension partnerships and Fuse Hub and some of the other assets that are available for folks in the manufacturing space.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about there. Obviously, this is the wheelhouse of where the Rochester region can support life sciences companies, and the wheelhouse of where the state provides resources to support them, whether they're direct incentives for a company to expand its own manufacturing facilities, or through these other public-private partnerships like you've mentioned, like the manufacturing extension partnerships, Fuse Hub, which is a statewide organization that supports manufacturers. Our local MEP, supported by New York State NESC, is called NextCore. They're based right in downtown Rochester. They're one of those examples, like a center of excellence or a applied technology center, where the state provides resources for those entities to exist so that you as a company can go utilize those supports, as well as providing money for shared research facilities or shared labs. We do that a lot through other partnerships, particularly within the universities. So all of those things are avenues for support of manufacturing expansion, particularly in upstate, especially in the Rochester region, as Theresa identified, where we're rich in the expertise and the partners to help you provide that. So, you know, all of those are things that we can help navigate for you if you're looking to take an idea that might have been developed in a metro where there is a lot of access to capital and a lot of, you know, intellectual capital, and bring it here to then do the manufacturing.
Yeah, and on that point, I just want to help answer that question. So that's one of the really going back to that first starting point slide, as you look at business partnerships, space, clean room. We're involved with companies on those searches and those connectivity points to RET sustainability programs, NextCore, a Center for Emerging and Innovative Sciences at U of R, MCC for skill upgrade training, and so many more. So I encourage you to reach out so that we can understand the total needs of what the company is looking for, what's keeping you up at night. And certainly incentives are part of that, but also there's so much more to understanding your business and really how to leverage and connect to those assets. We're happy to take that call and bring people to the table to help you not only get started here, but have great success.
When add to Vinny and Matt, we have space. It is affordable. It is accessible. I think this entire team is there to serve. So people that are looking to relocate or expand, please reach out. I think for the expansion, I would defer to Matt and GRE to be a lead on that. And mentioning Fuse Hub, just came in the mail yesterday, the Manufacturing Innovation Summer Edition from Fuse Hub, which is a great publication.
So thank you. And for those of you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Super quick, yeah, and just point out, because I would catch an elbow from one of my colleagues if I didn't mention it, that in addition to some of the programmatic work that I described earlier in terms of some of the things that we're doing around equity, obviously a core part of our shop here at the Community Foundation is to provide supports in terms of the personal philanthropy needs that folks might have. And so if you've got significant events, acquisitions, buyouts, and so on and so forth, we're a convenient opportunity to work through some of the tax implications and create some benefit in that regard.
Boy, I'm glad you mentioned that, Simeon, because I think that's an aspect that often gets overlooked. I will also say for those of you who are in for today's program, you heard Vinny mention NextCore, a terrific facility, physical facility located right in downtown Rochester. In our next hour, Jim Sinal, who runs NextCore, will be joining us and we'll talk about it. And as well, you heard Theresa mention both Kasana and VPG Medical. Those two innovative companies are included in our interviews with innovators that are coming up in the third hour. Theresa and maybe Joe, let me turn to the two of you. Theresa, this is certainly no surprise, and you touched on it a bit. Investment. When we talk to innovators, entrepreneurs, startups, the common plea that we get is how can I be better introduced and connected to investment opportunities, particularly in the life sciences, an area, Theresa, that you've correctly identified as as having a much longer lead time, which often makes it more challenging to invest in. Help me understand from your perspectives what life science innovators can do to help increase the chances of finding some funding.
Well, I think starting at the very beginning in terms of where to go, I'm happy to say that, we had the people on this panel are such strong partners that I have every confidence that anybody who would go to anyone on this panel would automatically think to send them over to Excel for us to evaluate and to take a look at. And generally what we do as soon as they come in is to evaluate where they are in their stage and whether or not it is something that we would be able to invest in. And if not, we will help direct them to life science venture funds that might be more at their stage. And also, I'll tell you another, Benny mentioned New York Ventures. They are a tremendous resource for life science, particularly in upstate New York. They have a large fund and they are very motivated to really advance upstate New York. And they are not afraid, like us, to go into the life science space. So that is a very strong recommendation I would make to anybody who's looking to find funding in upstate New York in the life science space.
Joe, do you have any thoughts on the funding conundrum as we often look at it?
I guess I'd turn that just a little bit. I mean, I agree with everything Theresa said about capital, but when I hear you ask about capital and the needs of startups and emerging businesses in our region, my mind also goes to human capital, right? Which is really the lifeblood of that business growth. And I think in that context, it's important to give a shout out to the work that the Greater Rochester Chamber under Bob's leadership is doing to head up our regional talent strategy. ROC 2025 has made some significant investments over at the Chamber to build out that regional talent strategy. And that is entirely focused on attracting talent to our region, retaining talent here, and being much more thoughtful, much more intentional about connecting incumbent talent to existing opportunities here in the region. So a number of initiatives are supporting that. Certainly, of direct benefit to the biomed and the life sciences space. But I think about Campus Rock initiative, which Matt alluded to, our really high density, 80 to 90,000 enrolled college students and almost 19,000 college graduates every year across our higher ed network here in the region. Campus Rock is focused on connecting those graduates and graduates to be to existing opportunities here in the region. We have, through the Chamber now, launched a regional career portal, which is essentially serving as a single front door, a single point of entry for anybody inside or outside of the region looking for opportunities with our, be they life science, biomed companies, or other employers in the region. So I think all of these pieces, when I think about the capital that startup and growing businesses really need to thrive in a region like ours, I feel really good about the work that's being done, not just to drive traditional capital, dollars and cents to them, but to really feed their growing talent demands.
And while we're talking about talent, Simeon, there's a question that's come in for you, although I think this may be a question that others would have some thoughts on. Are there resources available to folks who are looking to recruit a diverse workforce? This certainly is a priority for many employers, and I know many employers struggle with increasing diversity. Help me know where they could turn.
Sure. I know we've only got about a minute left, so I'll just point to a couple of awesome activities. First, a tip of the cap to Vinny and their team for some work that they're doing with the Workforce and Talent Work Group, which recently did an inventory of kind of some of these resources. Rochester Works is certainly one. Graced and Open Hiring, if you're looking to really diversify and are willing to embrace some cultural changes inside the firm to make a habitable place for folks that are coming out of different circumstances. The Urban League, Ibero have been great assets. MCC, Monroe Community College, is absolutely a place that is firing on all cylinders in that regard. And then I also want to put an emphasis on the work that the chamber's done with respect to its talent attraction work. I think the trick to it is, as Joe laid out some of the programs and efforts that are underway, how do we take those and then lay those over populations that we know have the need so that we ensure that we diversify the workforce?
Well, listen, this has been an incredibly resource-rich conversation, and I've seen some questions from folks, and we've had an awful lot of resources out there. So let me make my assurance to you, for those of you who are watching today, we're going to compile some of these contact information and other resources that we've sent out to you. So we will make that stuff available to you. I'm afraid we've reached the end of our time. Bob Duffy, listen, we can't thank you enough for assembling this terrific team. Theresa Mazzullo, Vinny, Simeon, Joe and Matt, thank you so much for being with us. I hope you'll stay for our next hour where we, as I said, we'll connect with the folks at NextCore, U of R, RIT, and some others. And then, of course, stay for the innovators conversations that take place in our third hour. Bob, I'll pass it off to you, but thank you very much for your help today.
Oh, Win, I want to thank you and Sarah and the MedTech team. I want to thank my great teammates here. Excellent presentations. They try to keep in that 5-minute time frame. They could probably talk for an hour each one because what they're doing is so important. And maybe just closing comment for those that aren't familiar with Rochester, I always go back to a comment a former Codex CEO said many years ago. Rochester and in Codex history was the hardest place to get top talent executives to come to, and the hardest place to get them to leave once they were here. So Simeon mentioned before, we are not a Rust Belt city. There's no rust here. You see a shine coming, and we're not perfect, but just by the teamwork and collaboration alignment you're listening to today, this represents where Rochester and the Finger Lakes region are going. So please reach out, any one of us, and there's no bad call here because we just will direct you to the right person to follow up on, but just appreciate so much the opportunity to come and present today. And thank you, MedTech. I've always been a big fan.
Well, thank you. Thank you, one and all. Well, please join us in the next hour, and we look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thanks so much.